Right. So just don't try to memorize the things. Like all these things that I'm saying. But whenever I say that it's important, just try to. Like at least try to memorize the concept, right? Because I think I had to give you some midterm exam also. I remember මම තාම plan කරලා නැහැ මේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ට මොකක්ද කරන්න කියලා. I remember for your seniors I asked questions about from this particular theoretical part. Right. Dotted, like Kramer, what is it, right? So you know, like you need to have some kind of operating system, like you want to like work on some kind of computer, right? Normally you have the operating system, right? So let's say, like once you install the Visual Studio IDE, a IDE can when you install that. So normally, if you have a C program, so how the machine can understand that particular whatever code that you have written, right? So it will be either compile interpretation team or correct. Right, take care on that. So let's say you have already written a C program, right? A C program the machine understand like how it is understandable by the underlying computer. Attend the process compilation and the interpretation eventually something that machine can understand. Machines can only understand zeros and ones, right? That like these kind of signals 0 1 0 1 something like that. So this will be eventually converted to this, and that process is called compilation or interpretation, right? So whenever you write a program using C# or other .NET compiled language like Visual Studio.NET, ASP.NET, it will be eventually like converted to the machine understandable machine code. Machine code when I will be using this common language runtime, right? And we have on the top of that, we have something known as base class library, right? Base class library. So you can see in the Visual Studio, ID open same as Bubble.io, there's this kind of application development pane. On the left side, you have some text boxes and will be component that you can drag and drop. So once you do that, the code is automatically generated. But compared to Bubble.io, we still have to write the logic. So that's the thing. So these components, whatever the text boxes and things, so they are like existing already pre-built, other than that. So it's developed by Microsoft. We just have to drag and drop, right? So they are in the form of libraries. Like Meva, they do have properties, and like it's like we are like importing some libraries, some functionalities into our application. Drag and drop and that particular libraries will be held by this base class library, right? So ADO.NET and XML, right? This ADO.NET architecture, I will tell you, like in maybe like a 7th or 8th week when we are with that database application. This layer actually is store the database. And here, ASP.NET Web Forms, Web Services, and Windows Forms. This is where we develop the software, like softwares. And here we have VB.NET, C#. And underneath that, we have common language specification. Because I told you, if you work for DWS language, it is easy for you to convert this particular program into C# to VB.NET. And that conversion is actually handled by the common language specification. You have the IDE here, right? All right. When you install the Visual Studio IDE, so you on the computer you have the operating system, right? Installed on top of that you have the high level programming languages. High level high level programming languages really understandable I mean like no. Low level languages can be syntax the whatever the programming but using code data like I mean like more close to the machine language zeros and ones on the I mean like hyper complex you have to do some hexadecimal things but when it comes to the high level programming language syntax is very easy to understand. A code එක තේරුම් ගන්න lazy සරලව. බබල්ලා you can it. I mean like you don't have to worry about the code but C# code එකේ අන්තංගට තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් right? And you have the common language specification where it specifies I mean like when you work with this I mean like .NET compiler language what to do. I mean like it makes the conversion easy among the languages. Then you have this ASP.NET Web Forms, Windows Forms, that means like Windows Application Development Layer. ADO.NET and XML, this is for exploration of data, base class library. That store the existing class libraries that is relevant to the all the components and things that you will be dragging and dropping and working on. Common language runtime, and it provides the runtime environment, and it is rather that the conversion happens. The code becomes the machine code, right? And you have the operating system. So modern double-OP language derived from C#, modern object-oriented programming language. So as a part of this lesson, you will also learn about the object-oriented programming also, right? So what does it mean by a class? What does it mean by an object, right? Derived from C# and Java. Features rapid application development abilities, right? So, any questions up to this point? Right? Any questions? Right. So the process of converting whatever the code that you have written is called the මේකෙදි වෙන්නේ ඇත්තටම C# වලදී වෙන්නේ it's called the compilation, right? Compilation කියන්නේ ඔයාලේ code එක machine එකට understand කරන්න පුළුවන් විදිහකට convert කරනවා become zeros and one. That process is remember ඒක තමයි it's called the compilation, right? Let's say if you have written a program using C#, a file එක extension එක වෙන්නේ whatever the name followed by CS. If you are like develop a program using VB.NET, whatever the name followed by VB extension, right? Where file ඊට පස්සේ compile උනාට පස්සේ තමයි this become a exe. මේක තමයි build file එක මේක තමයි හැමෝම execute කරන්නේ operating system. I mean like normally in Windows computers, right? But you cannot execute that in normal scenario in Linux computers. That's the case. So what happened is when you are written your code, you have the C# compiler or the VB.NET compiler. Compiler ka dino, right? So then initially with the help of compiler, it became something as intermediate language code. Remember, intermediate language code, right? So there's something known as I already told you, common language runtime. A common language runtime එක ඇතුළේ තියෙනවා අරන්නේ compiler code just in time compiler. අර JIT කියලා කියන්නේ මතක තියාගන්න නම් මම ආයෙත් කියන්නේ just in time compiler. That intermediate language code using this get compiler in the common language runtime, it became machine language. I mean like whatever the machine understandable machine code, right? That's the normal process, right? I mean like let me know if you need to I mean like explain more. Anyone? Right. So you have your C# code and you have that means myprogram.cs, C# compiler and the intermediate language code. You can build file එක. Build file එක කියලා this is the version. program.exe, program.dll. අන්නේ ෆයිල් එක තමයි you are running on the Windows computer game එකක්ම ඒක exe format එකේ තියෙනවා නම් so what happened is when you click on that exe eventually it becomes the machine understandable machine code. It's installed. So it provides like some kind of environment where you can create your application, where you can play the grades, right? This is called the intermediate language code. So, and you have the JIT compiler in the language, common language runtime, it became the native machine code, zeros and ones, and so on, right? That's the process. So this is the same thing. .NET basically include the common execution engine and a rich class library. Common language runtime accommodate duplicate languages, again C#, VB.NET, F#, like ASP.NET, it accommodate duplicate languages. Source code it became the intermediate language. exe file DLL file and eventually using the help of the just-in-time compiler, it became the machine code. That's the compilation process, right? So it's the same thing. .NET languages are not compiled to machine code. They are compiled to an intermediate language, and it takes up the code and recompiles to the machine code, right? Right. Any questions up to this point? Any questions? So, introduction to C#. So, it's a C#. Basically, it's object-oriented, event-driven programming language for rapidly developing console applications. Even you can develop Windows desktop applications, Windows Store applications. These are, yeah, I will tell you the example and web applications. So, console applications. So, what does it mean by console applications, right? I mean, like console application, like normally, I mean, like if you watch some kind of, I mean, like some kind of movies, like I mean, like James Bond or Mission Impossible, you see that there's a person who is always hacking into system, right? So probably, I mean, like normally it's they are just acting, but probably they are using a black screen, I mean, like black screen, and things will happen, right? So, I mean, like that's a kind of a like you have to work on a console, and I mean, like console application development environment. That means, I mean, normally, I mean, like normally in that space environment, you just only have the console. They don't have a graphical user interface, right? But here, Windows, we can, I mean, like click everything, we can do it in this. So it's a graphical user interface, right? We do have that. So normally, when you make application, console application means it's like a MS-DOS, I mean, like DOS application environment, some black screen and the white, I mean, like code is there. So the Windows desktop applications, right? Windows desktop applications. So can anyone tell me example for Windows desktop application? These are the applications that you are actually going to need Windows desktop applications. So Microsoft Word, I mean, Power or Excel. So all these are Windows desktop applications, and yeah. So that's the thing, right? Application that you are, I mean, like installing in the Microsoft Windows operating system that became a Windows desktop application. Probably the grade, I mean, the grade